Hi, this is Carl, and what I want to talk about in this video very briefly is my learning of any new modern foreign language using the Michel Thomas method and the Michel Thomas CD courses. Now to date I've learned with Michel Thomas French, Italian, and more recently started to do Polish and Japanese, which I'm still at a foundation and beginners level. But what I want to do is just to discuss how we as modern foreign language learners can use the Michel Thomas CD courses consciously and with confidence in order to gain the linguistic proficiency, oral linguistic proficiency, which Michel Thomas had desired for us as modern foreign language learners to achieve. Now this is the initial point of departure, and the methodology requires that this be the ultimate goal of the modern foreign language learner, to gain linguistic proficiency. But the question for me is, and this is something which intrigues me, is how different is my approach to using the Michel Thomas method different from anybody else out there who is also learning a modern foreign language using the Michel Thomas method. So what I'm going to do is just to describe as briefly as possible what I do when I'm using the Michel Thomas method. And you may be able to associate with some of the things which I'm about to comment on, or you may think that, or you may become aware of the fact that your approach to the learning using the Michel Thomas method is rather different. So here we go. When I started to learn Italian, I had an appreciation of the fact that it was very similar to Spanish and maybe to a lesser degree French, due to the fact that Italian, French and Spanish are all Latin-based languages. So I set out with the feeling that the word orders and the structures were going to be very similar amongst the languages, and therefore that gave me the confidence to learn, and also gave me the belief that I was going to do so effectively, and this happened to be the case. So what happens in general is that obviously I'm learning new words from the outset, and the majority of these words, if not all of these words, for at least the first few weeks of my learning are given to me in the spoken form. And immediately what I try to do is to convert these sounds into spellings, even if those spellings are fictitious, and visualize these spellings on my mind, on my brain, and then as more words come into the equation and I'm required to build up sentences of an increasing length, short phrases to lengthy sentences, I can see the words in my head. I can usually, it's a bit like a rolling film or a rolling set of credits, that I see the first word which I'm required to say within a sentence, followed then by the second and then the third. And then as time goes by, those visual references just seem to disappear, and it's as if naturally I'm able to just speak the sentence which I'm being required to translate from the CD course. But in addition to that, whilst I'm actually visualizing the sentence structures, I'm also, maybe on a subconscious level, becoming aware of the similarities which exist between the structures within, let's say, the Italian language, and also similar structures which exist in the Spanish and French languages as well. I'm also giving consideration to the similarities between the spellings of words and the sounds of words, which have either similar or the exact same translations in Italian, French and Spanish, or any combination of those languages. And in addition to that, we have the cognates, which Michel Thomas talks about consistently. In other words, those words within a language which have shared endings, which have consistently shared endings between one language and another, and you'll find a discussion about that on another of my YouTube videos. But as I said, that is the starting point. Obviously the spoken language is imitative of the way in which we learn our mother tongue growing up, in my case learning English, but at the same time having an adult brain and being a visual learner, as the majority of language learners are, I'm using the spoken language to create a visual reference on my mind without the need to make extensive written notes, and for me to be in a situation like most language learners tend to be, whereby I'm saying, look at all these notes, if I want to revise something, how on earth am I going to do that, because there are just too many notes here and nothing is in a structured order. So I'm using my brain as the paperwork, as it were, and using my brain as the reference on which I can sort of mentally write something down which I hear in the spoken form, and which, if I were to give consideration to how the words come together, then I can either think about that spontaneously, or I can practice by writing something down and once again giving consideration to the word order. Now this happens nearly every time I learn a new word which I hear for the first time in the spoken form. I immediately think of the spelling, and then slowly but surely I might go away then to consult a dictionary or a phrase book, see some of these words actually in their correct spelling, and look at how they've been translated. I'm also the kind of person who gives consideration to the fact that, or I ask myself, is this a literal translation of a phrase, or is this a non-literal translation? What do the words mean if they were taken in isolation? Which type of phrases should be learnt just simply as interjections? For example, we have a number of phrases in many foreign modern languages which, if we were to translate them word for word, would make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and therefore because of that difficulty, that awkwardness of translating some phrases word for word, it might be best, as I've noted within the last year or so, just to learn them as set phrases. So we're getting the fluency, we're getting an appreciation of the grammar, the sentence structure, the cognates which exist between modern foreign languages, the fact that we can just learn interjections, and then what we find as we conclude our learning from the Michel Thomas CDs is that we have the basic linguistic structures and the sentence structures in place in order to replace, for example, the nouns, become more acquainted with topic-based vocabulary, topic-based terminology, and we can build on from there on the condition that we've been motivated by Michel Thomas, which I hope the majority, if not all people, have been who have used the Michel Thomas course, and then we can move on from there to read more words. We know the rules of pronunciation which we pick up subconsciously or even unconsciously, and this is extremely beneficial for the modern foreign language learner. So that's just a brief overview of my learning with the Michel Thomas CD course, and also a generalization of my own learning styles.